So welcome everybody and thank you. We'll call this meeting to order. To get us started, we're starting at 1:01 EST, and I'll hand it over to Meg to do a roll call and confirmation of quorum.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin tonight, I'm going to start by respectfully acknowledging that Equestrian Canada is located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence and stewardship of the Kpmg and its tributaries dates back to time immemorial and will continue in perpetuity. We honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this territory, and we acknowledge our shared responsibilities to ensure health and well-being for all creation for generations to come. Further, we respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples in Canada. Our acknowledgement of the Algonquin Anishinaabe territory recognizes the oppressive history and current experience of colonization and is a reflection of our commitment to decolonize and to recognize and honor the pursuits of Indigenous nations and peoples' self-determination and sovereignty. So I will go through the roll call and I will go by category. If you could, when we do the, when I call your name, if you could just unmute yourself and just say here. I'll start category A, Victoria Winter.
Here.
Martha Wartz.
Here.
Patty Carley.
Here.
Charlene Kostecki. Karen Sparks. Desia Miller.
Here.
Elizabeth Quake.
Yeah.
Pat Fruin-Lord.
Here.
Thank you. Category B, Heather Findlay.
Here.
Jeff Anstey.
Here.
Nicole Duplessis.
Here.
Cindy Klassen.
Here.
Sandy Bell.
Here.
Danny Glant. Karen Swanche.
Here.
Adrian Smith.
Here.
Jerry Sweet.
Here.
Thank you. Category C, Gilles Seguin.
Here.
Faith Robillard. Joshua Shildroth. Dan Gull. Dan, you might be on mute. Okay, I'll come back to Dan. Mary Cork.
Here.
Sue Ockenden.
Here.
Archie Hurst. Caitlin Gagarik.
Here.
Janice Tyndall.
Here.
Okay, I'll also go through the current board directors. Chris Sorensen, President.
Here.
Doug Orr, Vice President 1.
Here.
Charles Pugh, Vice President 2.
Here.
Wayne Burwash.
Here.
Greg Collins.
Here.
Lisa Robertson.
Here.
Jane Milton. Rob Mitchell.
Here.
Carla Robin.
Here.
Mark Goldman. Incoming board directors, Melanie Bureau.
Here.
Chris Lowe.
Here.
Thank you. And then we have Kirsten Giles, Kpmg auditor.
Here.
Lord Peterson, EC legal counsel.
Here.
Here. Stephanie Parker, Sport Canada.
Here.
Thank you. And then from staff, Meg Kruger, CEO, I'm here. John Whiteman, CFO.
Here.
Marilyn Quorum, corporate operations, right here. Corey Dempsey, coordinator communications, is here. And Jerry Van Blockland, graphic and web designer, is here. And then our recorder, Dorothy Shaw, is here. So Chris, I've confirmed that there is quorum.
Thank you very much, Meg. We want to start the meeting with a quick review of our standard of conduct. This is something we're starting to do in a lot of meetings. We want to ensure that everybody on the call understands the conduct, and it allows us to have a really productive conversation. So today we welcome hard questions. We're not here to have an unfrank conversation. We want to really connect and discuss everything. However, if anybody is acting inappropriately, rude, or cutting people off, yelling, acting aggressive, any inappropriate behavior, they will be removed from the call. And that behavior will be forwarded to the board of directors to review if they continue to be a voting member following that. I make this reminder because we want to have a really constructive conversation, and we want everybody to feel like they can have their own opinion but still be in a safe place. So I want you to know that that's applicable for this meeting and applicable for meetings in the future, so that everybody feels comfortable to be heard. The next point of our agenda is the approval of the agenda. This is the first item for today. You've received a draft agenda on September 7th. I would like to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as corrected. The correction is we are going to remove item K, which is the bylaw changes, and also includes any changes to the articles. This will be removed from the agenda, but I would like to be very clear with everybody. We will discuss this in the question period, so feel free to wait for that, and we absolutely will have that conversation. But that being put forward for voting has been removed from this meeting. So with that being said, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda as corrected?
Gilles Séguin.
Thank you, Gilles. Does someone want a second?
I'm happy to second Karen's, want you?
Karen, thank you. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Anybody opposed, please state your name. Hearing none, that passes. Thank you. So we move on to item D of our agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the 2020 AGM. We will move that the approval of the minutes of the 2020 AGM. The draft minutes for the 2020 AGM were circulated on the 7th of September. We have not received any requests for corrections in advance of today's meeting. If there are other corrections from the members who were present in the 2020 AGM, please say so. If there are no corrections, does somebody want to move to approve the minutes? Is there any corrections from anybody on the minutes from last year?
Jerry Sweet here. I would move that we approve the minute.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Does somebody want to second that motion?
Janice Tyndall, I'll second that.
Thank you, Janice. All those that are in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please state your name. Hearing none, then I declare the minutes approved as read. That moves us on to item E of the AGM, which is the president's report. For those of you that know me, I'm quite frank, so I'm going to run through my assessment of where we've come from in the last year and give you guys kind of a rundown. So first off, on behalf of EC, and I'd like to welcome you to our second virtual AGM. I think everybody's presence here shows their commitment, passion, and dedication to our sport and industry and the path that EC is trying to go down. I think first and foremost, I would really like to thank all of our staff who've been absolutely unbelievable through hard times. all of our volunteers that sit on our board committees, and all of our operational committees have been absolutely fantastic. All of our affiliates that help us in the work that we're doing, and all of the athletes we have in competition and in the sport and industry. So EC faces massive challenges. We have a decline in our sport for 10 plus years, and that's only been compounded by COVID. We need to reimagine ourselves. We need to reimagine our sport and our industry, and we need to relook at the path that we're on collectively. We need to absolutely ensure that we have growth, that we provide value, that we have inclusivity, diversity, equity, and enjoyment in our sport, and we provide a safe sporting environment. So to that end, in the past year, what has EC done? Well, of course, we had COVID. COVID was a huge thing to deal with. That led to significant stress, uncertainty, both at a personal level and an organizational level. It required massive crisis management, operational financial challenges, as well as operational capacity challenges. It affected our staff, it affected our community, it affected our competitions, our riding schools, our boarding barns, and of course, our herd and our horses. So how have we gone about tackling this at EC? On a big picture level, the board of directors has really focused on creating a multi-year strategic plan and reviewing that plan when this crisis hit to ensure that we're clear on the path and where we're going. We're creating multi-year budgets to ensure that we're aware of how we're going to afford everything we're planning to do. We also, on a big picture, did a racial equity, diversity, and inclusion project and Safe Sport to really ensure that our organization is aware of those blind spots. For COVID, EC has turned out return to competition guidelines to help the sport. They've turned out horse fitness assessment tools and a decision tree. EC developed biosecurity protocols to help both with COVID and EHV to ensure that our operations, both in stables and competitions, had the best chance to get up and running. We also coordinated with PTSOs for funding from Ag Canada, and many provinces that participated got significant funds for that. Programs. Coach licensing went live. That's the beginning of a 5-year project to move towards licensed certified coaches, a project that's been on the books for decades, has kicked off now. We've launched our e-campus that now has significant amount of programs available over the internet to allow us to deliver at capacity and financially available, as well as grow our officials. Safe Sport is also on the e-campus, which allows us to scale Safe Sport, something we're going to have to do in our industry as identified by Sport Canada. We've also launched Rookie Rider. We're reviewing the Learn to Ride program. We've launched an officials program, and we've started delivering on a points program. Welfare also has been a big priority for Equestrian Canada, as always. Turning out and managing of extreme weather and air quality guidelines, the EHV protocols as discussed earlier. The Equine Animal Care Assessment Program has been launched. Equine Canada is also working on noseband protocols, and Equine Register has been selected for a discovery phase of equine identification and traceability. So where are we going? Well, we're on a long path, and COVID made it a little bit longer. The truth is that EC is an extremely complex beast, and our sport is years behind where we would like to be. But I would tell you, I see that as a huge opportunity. It allows us to evolve to a world-class level faster and hopefully become more nimble as an organization. And we are truly making progress. It's not always smooth sailing. We are not there yet. Change is not easy, and sometimes some feathers get ruffled. But we need to find the best path for the entire sport and industry. We are trying to do task forces. We are trying to consult with the community. EC needs to lead the national sport. We need to fulfill our mandate, but we need to do that through collaboration. I encourage everybody to come together. We need to shift towards a solution orientation, not a confrontational orientation. We need the expertise and the ideas from the community. We need mutual respect. We're not there yet. We're not even close. But we are showing actions, and our actions speak louder than our words. We cannot let our sport die. We can't be our own worst enemy on this path. So I truly encourage everybody to come together and to see that EC is really trying to fulfill our role, and we are on this path together. That would be my update on where I think we've come from in the last year. And with that being said, I'd like to shift to item F and welcome everybody to the meeting today. Again, really appreciate everybody's time, everybody's interest, passion, and expertise. We're going to run through this agenda as we're doing right now. I appreciate that, everybody approving it. And I want to make sure that we have both a respectful and frank and productive conversation today, and everybody gets heard. I would like to remind everybody that the financials we're discussing are last year's financials from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. And I would really like to start by thanking our staff who've been through an incredible difficult time in recent years, and leadership changes and COVID, and who have risen to achieve and support great progress this year considering incredible uncertainty that they've faced. And again, I want to thank our volunteers who sit on the board committees, operational committees, and who represent the equestrian community as our voting members here today. I would like to specifically thank our two officers, Doug Orr and Charles Q, who put in an incredible amount of time this year and have been a huge support to me and the entire organization in such a year. It is extremely appreciated. I'd also like to thank our outgoing directors, Craig Collins and Jane Milton, who have completed their board terms and will be dearly missed. So again, truly thank you to everybody, and thank you for being here. That brings us to item G on our agenda. I would like to introduce Stephanie Parker. Stephanie Parker is a senior program analyst and program division at Sport Canada. She's joining us today. She was scheduled to attend and provide a 10 to 15 minute presentation. However, since they are under restrictions from the caretakers convention due to the election, she will no longer be able to speak with us. She has provided a presentation in PDF, and it will be circulated following the meeting. That brings us to item H of our agenda, the report of the financial and audit committees. So I would like to introduce Rob Mitchell, Chair of the Finance Committee, to give an overview of the annual report, finance and audit. Rob.
Thank you very much, Chris, and hello to everyone. Chris described the year as incredible, with a year of incredible uncertainty. I think that's maybe an understatement, but it's certainly true. And as he listed off the accomplishments of the organization during the year, it's something I think we're very proud of. Financially, it was certainly the uncertainty showed there right as COVID started. I'll start with the bottom line. It is the good news that for the fiscal year ended March 31st, we had a very large surplus of $467,000. So we're pleased with the result of that. Not surprisingly, however, our revenues took a significant nosedive during the year, and for almost across the board, the revenues were down in virtually every category. The prior year, our total revenues were $6.4 million. This most recent fiscal year, $4.6 million. So a very significant drop. That $4.6 million of total revenue was supported by 1.3 million of that came from COVID-related government programs and subsidies that EC took advantage of, which were extremely helpful for our organization, as I'm sure it was for many companies and organizations across Canada. Without that additional funding that we were able to tap into, our revenue would have dropped from 6.4 million to 3.3, or almost 50% drop. So how do we end up with positive surplus for the year? Is that expenses were significantly controlled during the year. The cost control in every aspect, other than compensation for the existing staff, meant that we were able to drive down our expenses significantly. So from the previous year, where expenses were almost 6.5 million, our total expenses for this past year were 4.1 million. If people have read the financial statements, I know they've been distributed. You'll see that we finished the year in a relatively strong financial position with a reasonable amount of cash to go into the current year. I would draw your attention to note 10 in the financial statements. It is a statement about COVID and the continuing uncertainty it has for our organization. So we continue to be cautious, very cautious about how we spend money. Very difficult to predict revenues this year. But I think the finance team at EC is closely monitoring expenses. So I would like to thank the volunteers who were on the Finance and Audit Committee for helping us steer through this year. I'd like to particularly thank John Whiteman for many, many hours of dedication as he and his team navigated through the year and ensured that we maximized the COVID subsidies and programs for EC. So thanks to everyone then for their support, and just put forward the financial statements for your information.
Rob, I would also like to, on behalf of everybody, thank you for chairing that committee. And we're certainly not out of the woods yet, but you guys have done an excellent job, so very appreciated.
Thank you.
I'll also hand it back to you for section I, the acceptance of the financial statements. If you can introduce our auditor.
Yes, so Kristen Giles, I think, is with us on the line. She's been our auditor for as long as I've been involved with the EC. She's with Kpmg. Kirsten, would you like to say a few words?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rob. And it's a pleasure to be here today to present Kpmg's audit report. As I'm sure many people here today can appreciate, it's been another interesting year, perhaps in quotations, and certainly a full one under the COVID-19 pandemic now. That said, I'm happy to report that we've been able to continue performing our audits virtually with virtually no impact on the results we're able to achieve through this medium. So in particular, I would like to speak to our audit report's opinion, which does appear in the first paragraph of the report that we've provided. And it states that we've issued a clean or unmodified opinion as follows. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the organization as of March 31st, 2021, and its results of operations, its changes in net assets, and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. This is, of course, the result that all organizations should be striving to achieve, and it's my pleasure to communicate that that has, again, been the result achieved by the organization. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your continued trust you've placed in Kpmg as your auditor, and I'll turn it back to Rob to see if there are any further questions or comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Does anybody have questions for Kirsten? Okay, thanks, Kirsten.
Seeing-
Just
Go ahead, Rob.
the next item then, I would like, on behalf of the Finance and Audit Committee, recommend to the meeting that KPMG be appointed our auditors for the current fiscal year.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to come back to that vote in 1 second. I just want to state that the voting members have now received the 2020-21 approved audited financial statements on September 29th, and that received today the auditor's report and the report from the chair of the Audit and Finance Committee. And I just want to remind everybody, the audit and financial statement approval is a 5-part process. First, the staff complete an annual financials, year-end March 31, 2021. That is finished. Then the financials are audited by a third-party auditor, Kpmg. That is done. The audited financials are reviewed and approved by the board's finance committee. That is done. The audited financials are approved by the board of directors. This is a legal requirement. That is also done. And the last step, as outlined in the new Not-for-Profit Act, is the approved audited financials are presented to the voting members at the AGM, that they are provided an opportunity to ask questions. And reminder that as of 2015, the new act does not require the approval of audited financial statements by the members, and we have not done so since 2019 AGM. So I think we will say goodbye to Kirsten, so everybody feels comfortable. Does somebody want to? I think Rob has made the motion.
Chris, can I just clarify, you stated September 29th. I think we're running on Eastern Canadian Eastern time, so it would be the 28th. Am I correct on that?
That is a good catch. Thank you. And I looked at my phone. I am on the 29th. I'm a little ahead of you guys. Thank you. So does somebody, Rob has made the motion. Does somebody want to second the motion to elect KPMG as our auditor for 2021 to 2022?
Cindy Clausen will second that.
Sorry, Chris, you need a voting member to move in second. So Rob has made the recommendation.
Okay, does someone want to make the motion?
I'll make that motion. It's Joe.
Thank you. Can we keep the same seconder, Meg? Is that all right?
Yep, Cindy has seconded.
Okay, thank you for the catch. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any of those opposed, please state your name. Then that is approved. That brings us to item K, which is the bylaw changes, which has been removed from the agenda. So that puts us on to section L, which is our question period. This section is to discuss the questions from our category and those brought forward by the categories on behalf of the equestrian community. Questions were requested by September 21st, 2021, and we received 3 questions from category A. I'm going to run through those questions and also cover the bylaws, and then we should have a little time to open the floor for other questions. So I want everybody to know that we will get to their questions. So the first question we got was, Equestrian Canada requires a levy entitled the Jump Canada levy paid by competitors. If Jump Canada no longer exists, how can it assess a levy tax fine? Be honest. This levy is EC levy. The changes made by Equestrian Canada, read the administration of the levy, have not been transparent. How much does each province bring in? If there's no longer any allocations to the provinces, where is the money being spent? That is the question. So the Jump Canada levy is a discipline-specific levy. Internally at EC, it has been referred to as the JC levy. We see that as the jumping committee levy, but it is 100% an EC levy. And all those funds generally benefit the jumping programs across Canada. The total amount is 521,000 in 2019-2020, 336,000 2020-2021, and the budget this year that we are anticipating is 300,000 for 2021-2022. The funds are spent within the JUMP operating budget across the country. It's not divided by province. The next question that we got in was based on the bylaws. So I'm going to come back to that question when we get into the bylaws, or I'll do that question last since it goes to the bylaws. The next question was regarding eventing. Currently, the high performance eventing riders have no published 2021 squad selection criteria, 2021 carding criteria, or 2022 WEG selection criteria. The lack of clear governance parameters around this negatively affects the riders' ability to create a competition program and schedule. Where and when will this be posted? Will carding be rolled over for 2022 due to no posted criteria being made available for 2022? So this process is underway with the operations team. An expert was selected with the high performance eventing committee and the high performance director to complete the work this fall. However, due to recent decisions, the expert has been paused and the process will be delayed. The final criteria is targeted to be completed by October 30th, 2021. And the answers to these two questions will be part of that project. Part two of that question. Since the 2020, the high performance eventing riders have not had a coach, published high HP program, or a manager. The riders have made inquiries and suggestions to build a successful program, all of which have seemingly been ignored. What is the allocated budget for the coach manager? Ultimately, who will be in charge of hiring the new bylaw amendments? Will the riders be involved in the ultimate selection? Will the riders be involved in the high performance program? Is the board committed to outlining a fair and transparent process to hire a new coach? So I'm going to start with the last part of that question. The board is committed to fairness across the entire organization. Inclusion, diversity has been set as a major strategical priority for the organization. And the board hires Meg as the CEO and her team to carry out those strategic objectives. The budget for this is currently being reviewed in our 5-year budget review due to all of the COVID changes. The coach will be employed by Equestrian Canada and hired by the high performance director with close oversight and input from the high performance, the HPEG committee. Yes, the HPEG and the high performance director will make the selection, and there are 2 riders, elected rider reps that will be part of that committee. And that committee will help in building the high performance program when the 2 riders have been elected by their community. Part 3 of that question. Currently, due to multiple resignations, there are many vacant positions within the EC eventing. What is the board's plan to outline detailed job descriptions for these available positions? And what is the intention of the term of whether to make them paid or volunteer? What is the budget for the paid positions? So there was 3 resignations due to several factors, partially because of the shift towards the high performance committee and the domestic committee. I will say that all of the volunteers at Equestrian Canada are not paid, including the board of directors, board committees, and all operational committees. So there will be no budget for volunteers to be paid for these committees. And as I stated before, the board hires the CEO and her team to carry out filling these operational committees. The operational committees tie directly to the operational team, and therefore it will be carried out by that group. Number 4, as a group, it has been challenging to air our concerns about EC eventing individually or as a group. Are you as a board committed to ensuring concerns of the members get raised and dealt with fairly in a timely manner? B, assuming that that is the case, please describe how you will ensure the same going forward. Again, all of these strategic initiatives have been laid out in our 5-year plan for the board in terms of communication and in terms of fairness. And all of these will be dealt with by the CEO and the staff. How have we as a board committed to these things? We've created a reserve policy. We've created a 5-year budget. We've created a 5-year strategic plan. We're creating a code of conduct. We reviewed the TORs. We have got onboarding in place for new volunteers, and we have confidentiality agreements to ensure that people can feel comfortable on those committees. Part of the question 5. We see you have engaged sport and law group to review governance procedures, bylaws, etc., with a view of making recommendations to decomplicate the EC eventing selection, etc. process. Will you agree to include the rider reps in the review and deliberation process? So a point of clarification here, EC engaged sport and law group, who is one of the leading not-for-profit and sport governing experts in the country, to help EC with our bylaws and be sure that EC's bylaws were world-class. They were not engaged to help with the EC eventing selection. So the sport and law group will not be part of the eventing selection, but the eventing selection process will be created by the high performance, the HPAG committee, which will include 2 rider representatives when their community has selected them. So EC is committed to that process, but it's not sport and law group that is helping with that. So that brings you back to the second question about the bylaws, which I will run through as a bit of an introduction quickly to make sure I've answered the questions exactly as they've been asked to us. And then we can speak more generally about the bylaws, and Q can help me a little bit. So based on shareholder, the first question, based on stakeholder and community feedback, could you please make available the complete input and conclusions from this feedback? This was done already in the competition review phase 1. There's about a 90-page report that is available. And if anybody would like the report, we can publish that. I thought it was on the website, but we can make sure it's on the website. It's about 90 pages, and it included all stakeholder groups' contribution and was brought to the board of directors unanimously from those representatives from each group. Number 2, opens the discussion, quote, opens the discussion on development of voting structure that is representative of those that use the EC services. In what way does this open the discussion, and why can't the discussion take place before the bylaw changes are made? Well, it's a big process, and we need to go step by step. We were trying to accomplish step 1, but at this point we've hit a roadblock, and we're going to have to review how we're going to go about that. So we are really trying to move towards what everybody has asked us for. Part 3 of the question, please publish a plan for the collaboration effort over the next 6 months. That will be under review, considering current events. Number 4, allow for sports other than FEIs. Please specify what you have in mind at this time for other sports. Well, we have other sports like our breed sports and other sports that are connected to us through other affiliations that are not defined in our bylaws. So that is what we mean by that. Number 5, relative to the wording, number of voting members and how they're appointed will be determined by the directors and approved at the annual meetings at the voting membership. This makes governance internal, circular, given the directors appoint themselves, new directors, the potential for conflict of interest is great. I would like to address this part directly. I'm not sure where this interpretation came from, but what was proposed was that we would stay with 27 voting members. There would still be 9 for each category, each category would still select their 9 themselves the same way. All that was proposed is that it was 1 group instead of 3 groups to provide the simplicity that everybody had requested from us. So at no point would the board of directors been able to appoint voting members or appoint board of directors members. We simply were trying to combine to 1 group of 27 versus 3 groups of 9. How we got to that 27 was proposed to stay exactly the same as it is now, both in terms of the numbers and who and how those people were selected to fill those 27 voting spots. Never was it proposed that the voting members would be selected by the organization, operationally, or by the board governance-wise. It was proposed that it stayed exactly the same, just made simpler as requested. Number 6, from the governance tab on the EC website, category A consists of 8 FEI sport disciplines with approximate total of 18,000 members. Those belong to this category are sport license holders who indicate a primary discipline when purchasing their sport license. The members of this category represent at EC the sport discipline committees. Members of each committee are elected by the sport license holders through a process outlined in the terms of reference for each of the sport discipline committees, which can be found in the operations manual. This is not true, and I asked the same question the previous AGM. Why has this not been removed or modified? Well, we are trying to modify the bylaws. We are trying to fix these things. This will be a work in progress. The comment is, I think the root of complaints and difficulties with the governance structure of EC is that the organization is too broad. EC license holders such as I want an organization that is devoted to competition and development from the grassroots to the highest level of horses, riders, coaches, officials, and competitions related to FEI sports. Category C voting members have 9 votes that don't relate to this group in any significant way. Category B, another 9 votes, have some relation to sport, but also other objectives which may not be related. The provincial organizations, for the most part, don't provide any benefit for national or FEI license holders. Insurance can be purchased for less than a provincial membership. Category A are associated with the sports, but can't be said to represent the sports that they are elected to by the sport license holders. Example, the dressage committee is not elected by the license holders. Those are comments from the community. I would put forward that EC is committed to making our bylaws simpler, and we see value in each of the categories, hence their being involved in our organization. So I would put forward that these comments are not from Equestrian Canada, but from a stakeholder that obviously has concerns about our voting structure. We are committed to making sure that our voting structure is simple and accessible for the stakeholders that use the organization, and want to make sure that everybody has a way to get their voice heard. With that being said, I'd like to start to address the bylaws. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, and then I will allow Q, the head of our governance committee, to speak. I think what is really important for everybody to understand is the intention behind the bylaw changes. The intention was to react to the requests that we've had from our stakeholders, from our voting members, and from our community, to make the governance simpler, more efficient, and give our stakeholders a voice. We were trying to make changes incrementally to make sure everybody was comfortable, and we were trying to make sure there was time set aside for people to be consulted further in the coming year. The board of directors' job is to identify risks to EC and to mitigate those risks. So one of those risks is inclusion and diversity, making sure that people of minorities have an ability to get a voice in how this organization is run. Another risk to EC is our ability to be nimble. We need to be able to adjust to the current environment and move in a path that makes our sport and our industry successful. We need to have a governance that allows EC to be nimble to succeed in the future. The other risk of our current governance is that a very small majority could stop us from moving forward with the needs and the desires and the progress of the masses. The way it currently sits, 4 voting members could block 23 voting members, all supporting one direction. And if we're going to move forward together, we need to move forward for the betterment of the whole group. So that is one of the major risks to EC as a whole. And with that, I'll turn it over to Q to add a little bit more to the governance and bylaw conversation.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Chris said, really, for the last 4 years, we've had more discussions on who sits at the table, who doesn't sit at the table, how the table's arranged, how many tables we should have, and we're not having the conversations on the substantive issues that really affect the organization. We've got lots of feedback from folks that don't like the current governance structure for a variety of reasons, and so this is why we're trying to move forward, and it boils down to four basic principles. The first one being simplicity, making it less complex so we get better efficiency, better effectiveness, and better outcomes. The second piece is relevance. It needs to be relevant to those that use the services or will use the services, and they can see their voice in how the organization moves forward. It needs to be inclusive, so that the smallest groups in the equestrian family have a voice, and the average member can see a pathway, can have access to a pathway to be a voting member. And finally, it needs to embrace good governance practices. And some of the practices that we have right now are the practices that are not recommended in a solid governance structure. So the first step on moving that forward was there's a lot of minor changes in the bylaws that were presented, but the main substantive change was getting rid of the categories, and simply that, instead of having 3 classes of voting members, is to have just one class, and then have a discussion on who do we serve, and once we've identified who we're serving, what are the voting rights associated with those, and how should that be structured? And we don't have a preconceived notion of what that voting structure looked like. At one end of the spectrum, it could be just the way we are, and it could go all the way to the other end of the spectrum where every member has a vote. So this is just the first steps into a longer conversation, but at the same time, if we don't get a governance structure that's relevant to us in the long haul, we're just going to be chewing up capacity and time. And we have to remember that the voting structure simply serves 3 purposes. One is the voting members are there to elect directors. That's where you have your greatest influence on the direction of the organization. 2, their voting members are there to pass bylaws. And 3, the voting members are there to accept the financial report at the end of the year. And if we have our governance set up right, it should just trickle in the background. Being on the governance committee would be a very mundane job, because we wouldn't be dealing with any hard issues. Everybody accepts the governance. It enables us to do the work, and we're focused on the substantive issues, and the organization moves forward. But right now, governance seems to be overshadowing how the operations of the organizations and getting meaningful changes into the field for the people that are using our services.
Thank you, Q. So just everyone keeping in mind, we're not voting on that today, but we did not want to dodge the issue. We wanted to give you guys some feedback and let you know the intention of where we were coming from. We have answered all of the questions that were sent to us by the deadline, but my thought is we'll open the floor for maximum 10 minutes if we still have questions, or if we're finished earlier, we can be finished earlier. But I want everybody to feel free to ask questions should they have them, and we'll do our best to answer them, with the caveat that if it takes a lot of detail, we might have to get back to you, but we will do our best. And any questions that we don't get to, please feel free to email them and we will respond to them by email. So any questions we can handle now, we will, but we will not avoid any questions that come out of this meeting. So I'll open the floor up a little bit. Jerry, I see your hand. Jerry, do you have a question? If you do, you're still on mute. Jerry? Does anybody else have a question?
I'm sorry, I am now unmuted.
Great,
My
we got you now,
apology.
Jerry. No problem.
You mentioned the mandate of EC and its association with sport. My question essentially is, maybe it can't be answered, I'm not sure, but how do we deal with those sports that are part of the equestrian community, but are entirely governed outside of Canada?
I think that's a great question, Jerry, and it's one of the things that we were trying to address with the bylaws and things that we've been looking at, for example, on the strategic task force. Currently, our committees, our sport committees are defined as the FEI disciplines. That is an issue because, first of all, one of the disciplines no longer appears to be supported or is currently in flux with the FEI. And we've got other disciplines that maybe we can provide an opportunity to grow through that we can't engage with. So I think you have a great question. One of the answers to your question is to look at how we do sanctioning. But all of that requires getting all of these foundational pieces in place. I would tell you that from looking at this on a strategic task force for the board of directors, there's a big opportunity for EC to grow through collaboration, but we need to make that step forward, and we need to have the capacity in our operations team to really dive deep in that and figure out how do we partner with these other sports well, and how do we provide a value add to them. And I think it's important to try and bring them into our circle so our sport grows. And if there's more people riding, whether they're riding Western or dressage or eventing or jumping or driving or vaulting, in the end, growth in the industry is going to be good for everybody. So we need to change the way we think about these things, but we can't get to those changes, as Q is saying, that are really going to make an effect in the field until we work out some of these foundational pieces. But we're spending a lot of time spinning our wheels on some of these foundational pieces. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think directionally we need to change how we do business to be more inclusive, and we need to have a rethink on what we do. We cannot be everything to everybody, but we need to be clear on what we do and what we don't do, and then try to do those things for as many people as we can, as well as we possibly can. And I think that's the task that we need to set our minds to.
I would just like to add, because one of the reasons I asked the question, I'm not very much involved with Western disciplines, but if you look at the total membership of our provincial organizations, a very large number of those members who are paying into funding, I know it's not a lot, but are paying into funding that goes to EC, are from those different disciplines. And as things are presently, it's very hard to make an argument to our provincial members to be a part of what's going on, because there is nothing any further up the chain.
I 100% agree with you, Jerry. And I think that's something we want to work to change, but we need to figure out how we go about doing that. If you want to use the Western disciplines as an example, as Sport Canada starts to push the implementation of safe sport into the sport, it's going to become a real concern for Western disciplines. How do they sanction sporting events in Canada when they aren't facilitated or don't have the ability to facilitate Canadian safe sport? So that creates an opportunity for EC to partner and add value and grow, to be honest with you. but we need to have the capacity in our operational team to do that. We don't have unlimited funds. We don't have unlimited people. And so we need to get these foundational pieces sorted out so that we can start to really focus on growing the business. And I think you're absolutely right. If we cannot explain to a discipline or to any affiliate what our value add is, let alone our sport license holders, we fundamentally have a business problem. And even though this is a not-for-profit organization, we should still very seriously look at what is our value add to each and every person we engage with on an individual level and an organizational level. So we need to get to that business model of how do we add value and grow, and we need to have the resources to do that, and we need to have everybody on the same page so we're finding the best solutions.
Thank you.
I just see Kathleen had a question. Stephanie Parker is unable to speak with us today because of the recent election, so I don't want to skip over your question. My apology, I just saw it on the notes. Does anybody else have a question while we have the floor open? Going once, going twice. Okay, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email. We are happy to answer them and would love to do so. Oh, we got one, sorry. You made the buzzer.
Excuse me, I just want an example of when 4 people block a decision, because I think for the voting members, when we are just like tonight in AGM, we vote all together for the financial and not separately by category.
Mm-hmm.
And when we vote on bylaw changes, tonight we don't have, but if we have some, we vote all together. And also for the election, we vote, each person vote for their rank people first and second, and each person, the vote of each person, the votes, plural, are the same, and this is not by category. Yes, we are in category when we vote. The vote of one or the other is the same. So can you give me an explication when 4 persons can block a decision? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to let Q explain that because he's even better in the governance than I am. But for example, today, when one category doesn't want the bylaws to go forward and 2 categories do, that is an example for you. Q, can you elaborate on the 4?
Yeah, Section 199 of the Not-for-Profit Act gives 5 conditions as to if you have different classes of voters, gives 5 situations where you have to have a class vote. Each class must vote individually, and you have to have a supermajority in those classes for it to pass. So something that affects the voting rights or the membership of the other voting members would require a class vote, a special vote. So you could have a situation where category 1, let's say we have 3 categories with 9 people in them. Category 1 votes unanimously in favor of moving forward. Category 2 votes unanimously in moving forward, and category 3, 5 of the 9 people vote in favor of moving forward, but 4 don't, because we didn't get 6. We didn't get 6 votes. We only got 5 votes in that 3rd category. The result is the motion isn't passed because we didn't get 3 categories all approving that vote. So in that situation, you can get 27 or 24 people being overruled, 23 people being overruled by 4 votes. And that's the risk the board, we didn't come to this conclusion by happen chance. We've been looking at that, and as well, we've we've had governance experts and legal advice that says that this is a risk that you need to address in your governance, and it's not a best practice for governance structure. So that's what we were trying to address when we just by eliminating the categories, you end up with a pool of 27 voters, and you don't have to worry about Section 199 in the Act, and you don't have a situation where a small group, a very small group, can overrule the vast majority.
Thank you, Q. I see Catalin's hand up. We've gone over the 10 minutes, but I'll take one more question and then we'll move on. I again remind everybody, any more questions, we are happy to take them and we'll answer them by email.
Thank you,
Catelyn.
Chris.
Yeah.
My question is actually directed to Charles. So in the situation that he just described, and we moved the 3 voting classes into one class, what would be the no-go on the number of votes in that situation of 27?
In that situation, it would be 2/3, so it would be 18.
Okay, so there would need to be 18 or more yes votes to move a motion. Thank you.
In a situation where you required a class vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody very much. Like I said, we are open to questions should there be any more. That does bring us to section M of our agenda, which is new directors introduction. So first I would like Lisa, who was the observer of our board nominations. Mark could not be with us tonight. He had another commitment for one of his other volunteers positions. So if Lisa can give us an overview on the insights and updates of the election process.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm pinch hitting tonight at the last minute. So I've got my notes in front of me that were Mark's notes, so bear with me. So obviously our process was complete. It was successful. Out of 10 potential candidates, the group narrowed down to 7 whom we interviewed. From that, we put forward a slate of 4 candidates. The committee felt these were the best 4 candidates based on a board matrix we did this year. And this is my first year, so I didn't know that this was a new process, but we did a board matrix where we looked at the skill sets of our existing board and strengths and weaknesses, as well as representation and diversity. And we looked at those final 4 candidates, or we presented those final 4 candidates to the committee with the board matrix in mind. We had to elect 3 directors this year for 3-year terms. And we had 2 directors that were out of the 4 we voted, or the committee voted in 2 new directors and 1 incumbent, Wayne Burwash. Everyone's familiar with Wayne as a returning director. Chris Lowe was voted in from British Columbia, and Melanie Bureau from Quebec was voted in as a new director. So welcome to Chris and Melanie. I haven't welcomed you in person, haven't seen you since the meetings. As it was said, Mark chaired the committee. I was what would be called an observer. The process was good, and but one question did come up as part of the process around the role of both the chair and the observer, and whether or not we don't have a vote, just to be clear, the board members do not have a vote. But we were asked at multiple times for our input and our views, and we definitely shared those views. So there was some questions around that, and those were answered. That when questions are asked of the board, we should be able to answer them, and we did. I think that that's something that we'll look at. We're looking at it right now. Mark and myself are looking at the process for next year as well, and we'll be, I think, more clear on the process and around the observer and the chair's ability to provide feedback in those meetings, as well as answer questions. So I think that summarizes the process. I'm happy to answer any questions before we move into introducing and letting, I believe, Chris and Melanie speak a little bit about themselves, but I'm happy to take any questions just as the observer of the process.
Any questions? Patty?
Thanks. Question for next year is, it would be really useful to get that board skills matrix, or I don't recall it being really explained well, but that would be very helpful background information for the voting members to see if we could.
Great note. We'll, Lisa and Mark, we'll get that back to Mark and make sure that's noted. That was new for this year, so I think we'll look to incorporate it more in the future, and we're happy to share that. So, okay, with that, we'd like to give the new board members a few. Meg said you only get 30 seconds here, so you better be quick on your introduction. But I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to say hello and introduce themselves. So we have Melanie Bureau.
Hello, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to say that I'm very pleased and honored to have been selected as a director of Board of Equestrian Canada. I thank all members for their vote and trust. I'm an equestrian at heart from early childhood, and I've competed in the past in show jumping and dressage as an amateur. I own many horses during all those years and still have one these days. Professionally, I'm a business coach and consultant working mainly on strategy and organizational development. I have a broad business expertise and I hold a master's degree in business administration. I'm passionate about horse people and helping businesses achieve their full potential in a sustainable and healthy manner. You can rest assured that I will do my utmost to oversee to the best interests of Equestrian Canada and all its members and stakeholders. I want to say a word in French. D'abord, je suis très heureuse et honorée d'avoir été choisie comme nouvel administrateur du conseil d'administration de Canada Équestre. Je remercie tous les membres pour leur vote ainsi que pour leur confiance. Je suis une passionnée par les chevaux, les gens et aider les entreprises à atteindre leur plein potentiel. Vous pouvez être assuré que je ferai tout mon possible pour veiller au mieux des intérêts de Canada Équestre et de tous ses membres et parties prenantes. Merci.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Wayne, Meg says you get to introduce yourself again, so.
Okay, I didn't know I was going to really get a chance to talk, but I think most people know me, so I'm not sure what to say. I live on a small farm west of Calgary, and my involvement in horses has been sort of twofold. I'm an equine veterinarian, got a practice while I'm most retired, but my practice is a 6-person exclusively equine practice. And so I've been, of course, involved in that respect in the horse industry for a long time. And through that, I'm an accredited FEI veterinarian for jumping, dressage, eventing, reining, vaulting, and oh, yeah, I guess that's it. Anyhow, I'm also a quarter horse breeder, and I bred all kinds of horses, lots of national champions, and lucky enough to get one reserve world champion. So that's been my big involvement as far as a personal thing in the horse industry. So, but for my experience on boards, I've served on the board of the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association, as well as serving on a lot of committees. I'm on the board of the American Quarter Horse Association, the Canadian Quarter Horse Association, immediate past president, on the board of the Alberta Quarter Horse Association. And of course, as past experience, I've served on the Equine Medication Committee of EC and also on the Health and Welfare Committee. So anyhow, I'm very dedicated to the cause of Equestrian Canada. I think there's a real need for a very strong voice, a unified umbrella organization As all you know, I think we're very fragmented. The industry is very fragmented, and as Chris mentioned, is maybe shrinking a little bit. And so I think we all need to work together, and I'm very committed and dedicated to work towards the goals and strategies that have been expressed tonight. So I'm honored to be serving again for Equestrian Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Welcome back. And we have Chris Lowe.
Well, good evening, everyone. Happy to be part of the board. My name is Chris Lowe. I'm based in Vancouver. For my day job, I am a portfolio manager. I work for a wealth management firm, and I have for the last 12 years. And I have a finance degree, as well as I'm a chartered financial analyst. So been working in essentially managing portfolios for people for the last 12 years. For the last year, I've been on the Equestrian Canada Finance and Audit Committee, which I've enjoyed very much. And I think we're all very fortunate to have Rob Mitchell at the helm of that committee. It's been an enjoyable experience. And also I've got to see the hard work of John and Meg. And so that's been a great experience. And that's what sort of, brought me into this slowly, and so it's good. I feel like I've got a good sense of the financials, and now I can sort of expand. In addition to that, I have 2 young daughters that are starting into the their pony development and their pony journey, I guess you could say. So I'm getting that side of it. And then for myself, I've been competing in show jumping for the last 20 years. I have a couple of horses I compete here. I just got back, I was in Spruce Meadows for 3 weeks, where I saw Dr. Burwash at the FBI checkpoints there. And then I have a couple of horses, younger horses in Europe. So yeah, I sort of compete. This week I'm doing the 2-star at Thunderbird, but at Spruce Meadows I competed up to the 5-star level. Yeah, so I've kind of got a bit of a balance, I guess you could say, in that I have on one side spend a lot of time looking at businesses and companies and how they run, and then on the other side, I've competed all over North America and a bit in Europe, and sort of an avid equestrian, and this is my absolute passion. So hoping I can, lend a bit of the business side, my experience there, as well as my equestrian experience to hopefully make Equestrian Canada, the organization that I think it can be. And as Dr. Burwash and Chris talked about, it's a bit fragmented, but I think there's good vision there, and I think it's capable of being a fantastic organization. So I'm excited to be part of that.
Thanks so much, Chris, and welcome to all the board members that are joining us. I would really like to again thank the staff. They've been through a lot, and they've been fantastic for the organization, as well as the leadership team. And never thanked enough is Meg for all that she does. Really appreciated by everybody, and I'm lucky to get to be the person to thank you for that. All of the volunteers on this call, the operational committees, the board committees, and especially the officers who supported me this past year. Everybody's time and dedication is extremely appreciated. And also it's probably my last opportunity to really thank again Craig and Jane, who've been incredible contributors to the board of directors, and we'll be sad to see you go, and wish you the best of luck, and we'll for sure be hitting you up for some sort of committee or volunteer position as soon as we can. So thank you again to those guys. That brings us to item N, which is the adjournment of the meeting. I want to thank everybody. Thank you again for your time and contributing today. I really appreciate that it's a constructive AGM and that we're all working together. And so with nothing further to discuss, I wish everybody a wonderful week and adjourn Equestrian Canada's 2021 annual general meeting. Thank you again to everybody.